You are already dead. The moment you were born, you began to die. You think of death as something distant, something waiting patiently at the far end of a long road. But the truth is that death was stitched into you from the beginning, growing quietly with every breath you take, riding inside your blood, hidden inside your cells, guiding you every second not toward life, but steadily, irreversibly, toward your own vanishing. Every heartbeat you feel is not a sign of strength, but the ticking down of a clock you cannot see, a slow burning of the only candle you will ever hold, a reminder that every moment you spend awake, asleep, distracted, joyful, or miserable, is a moment that death has already claimed from you and will never return. You live inside a body that is already decaying, already betraying you, already collapsing in ways too small for you to notice, until they become too loud to ignore. And when you do notice, the ache, the slowness, the forgetting, it will not be the beginning of your end, but merely the point where you can no longer pretend you weren't already dying. You chase goals, you build memories, you fall in love, you rage against time, you try to immortalize yourself in stories and songs and children and art, but all of it will dissolve, piece by piece, grain by grain, until your name is no longer spoken, your face no longer remembered, and your presence, which once felt so solid, so urgent, is nothing but a soft silence where something used to be. The terrifying truth is not that death waits for you somewhere far ahead. The terrifying truth is that you are already in its arms, already part of its slow, patient harvest, already halfway gone, even as you cling to the illusion that you are still becoming something, when in reality you have been unbecoming from the very start. This is you are already dead. Not a prophecy, not a warning, but a simple fact that you have been living inside since the first time you opened your eyes and gasped at a world you were destined to leave. Immortality is hell. What if the thing you fear isn't death, but never dying? At first, immortality sounds like a dream, endless time to explore, endless youth, endless second chances. But the longer you live, the more the dream begins to rot, until it reveals itself for what it really is, a slow, suffocating descent into madness. You see everything you love crumble. You watch faces you once knew turn to dust. You outlive every era, every invention, every idea, until even the languages you once spoke become dead noises nobody remembers. And still you remain, a relic wandering through centuries that forget your name, carrying memories too heavy to bear, scars too deep to heal, and a loneliness that grows louder with every empty year that passes. Time stops being a gift. It becomes a cage. Passions burn out. Curiosity fades. Even the stars will die one day, swallowed by a universe growing colder and darker with every second. And when the last sun flickers out, when the last voice goes silent, when there is nothing left to touch, taste, or feel, you will still be here, floating, waiting, alone. Immortality isn't a blessing. It's an endless prison where death would be the only mercy, a mercy denied to you forever. This is immortality is hell, not fire and chains, not demons and punishment, but something far worse, being trapped inside your own mind with nothing left to live for and no way to end it. Existential dread. There comes a moment, maybe in the dead quiet of night, maybe in the middle of laughter, maybe while staring at your reflection a second too long, when something slips through the cracks of your normal thoughts, something dark and silent, a question that arrives uninvited and refuses to leave. What am I? And why does any of this matter at all? You look around and realize that everything you thought was solid, your name, your story, your goals, your little daily rituals, is just scaffolding over a vast emptiness, a carefully built distraction from the sheer fact that you are a conscious being trapped inside a decaying body on a spinning rock, hurtling through a universe that will never care that you were here. The more you think about it, the more it grows, a kind of mental vertigo, because when you truly try to find meaning, real, lasting, objective meaning, you come back empty-handed, again and again, and the silence that greets you is not peaceful, but paralyzing, like standing at the edge of a cliff with no bottom and no reason not to fall. You realize that everything you do, every conversation, every plan, every ambition, is partly an attempt to distract yourself from this bottomless void beneath your feet, this silent truth that one day you'll die, and nothing you ever did will matter to the cold stars, or the dead soil, or even the people who once claimed to love you. And worst of all, there is no answer, no God that explains, no cosmic plan that comforts, no final reward or punishment that makes it all feel worth it. Just a terrible freedom, the kind that leaves you shaking, because if there is no meaning but the one you create, then you are responsible for giving your own suffering a purpose it may not deserve. This is existential dread, not just fear of death, but fear of living without an anchor, fear of drifting in a reality that will never offer closure, fear that no matter how hard you try to stay grounded, some part of you will always feel like you're screaming into a vacuum that doesn't echo back. Solipsism. Only you are real, or at least you can never be sure anyone else is. What if no one you've ever met, not your mother, not your best friend, not the strangers who pass you by, not even the voice you're reading in your head right now, has ever truly existed outside the theatre of your own mind, and everything you've ever known has been nothing but a projection, a convincing hallucination wrapped in faces, names, and voices that vanish the moment you stop thinking about them. You can watch them laugh, you can hear them cry, you can feel their touch and look into their eyes and swear you see a soul staring back. But deep down, no matter how hard you search, you can never know if there's anyone behind the curtain but you, never prove that the world you inhabit isn't just a dream you've never woken up from. Every conversation you've had, every memory you hold sacred, every lesson someone taught you, all of it might have come from nowhere but your own unconscious mind, feeding itself its own reality to avoid the unbearable truth that you may be the only consciousness in existence, locked inside a universe made entirely for your observation and nothing more. And as that thought crawls deeper into your bones, you realize how horrifying it truly is. Because if no one else is real, then no one can truly love you, or hate you, or miss you when you're gone. Every relationship becomes a mirror, every smile a script, every embrace a phantom echo in a hall with only one soul breathing in the dark. Worse still, if you're alone in all this, then you're not just the protagonist. You're the prisoner, the architect, the warden, the god, and there is no one to wake you up. This is solipsism, the eerie possibility that reality may be nothing but the dream of one mind, and that even in a crowded room, you are infinitely, eternally alone. Nihilism. There is no meaning, not in the world, not in you, not in anything. Strip everything away, your name, your dreams, your fears, your gods, your flags, your favorite songs, your plans for tomorrow, and what remains is a raw, empty awareness floating in a world that does not care, surrounded by objects and people who are just as lost, just as hollow, just as desperate to believe that something, anything, actually means something. But it doesn't. Morality? Invented. Purpose? Assigned. Truth? Flawed, fragmented, manipulated. Love? Chemical? Identity? A temporary mask stretched over instinct and memory. History? A story told by the last ones left standing. And the future? A black wall you'll slam into no matter how hard you run. Nihilism doesn't whisper. It stands behind you in perfect silence while you pray, while you laugh, while you try to convince yourself that your choices matter, that your life adds up to something larger, that you are building a legacy or a soul or something divine, and then it says, "No, you're not. You weren't born for a reason. You won't die for one either. The stars didn't align to place you here. The universe didn't design you. The world will forget you. And long after your body returns to dirt, nothing will remain to prove you ever breathed except atoms recycled into something equally meaningless." And maybe the most disturbing part of nihilism isn't the emptiness itself, but the fact that, deep down, some part of you always knew this was true, and you've been distracting yourself from it your whole life, because to face it fully is to feel the bottom drop out from under everything. This is nihilism, not depression, not hopelessness, not even despair, but a quiet, relentless gravity pulling everything you thought mattered into a black hole where nothing escapes and nothing was ever meant to. Existence is a prison. You were thrown into this world without warning, without memory, without consent, and from the moment your lungs first filled with air, you were shackled to a body that will rot, a mind that will break, and a timeline that will never stop dragging you forward toward a death you can neither see nor avoid. Your freedom is a performance, an illusion given to keep you quiet, as you march through systems you didn't build, languages you didn't choose, and beliefs implanted in your brain before you were even capable of understanding what they meant, all while pretending that your choices somehow matter in a universe that doesn't even know your name. Even your thoughts are not entirely yours because they are shaped by forces older than you. Biology that pulls your desires like strings on a marionette, culture that programs your reactions like code, trauma that bends your logic like heat distorts steel. And yet you are told to act as though you are responsible for all of it. You sleep to escape, but even in dreams you remain imprisoned, caged by subconscious fears, memory fragments, and distorted echoes of a world that will never let you go, only to awaken and return to the same rituals, the same noise, the same slow decay that makes you forget you're waiting to die. Existence is not a gift wrapped in beauty and wonder, but a long, silent sentence, served in isolation inside your skull, where the walls are made of time, the guards are made of thought, and the only escape is the same black silence that preceded your birth, and will swallow you again. Free will is a lie. You are not choosing. You are following a script you cannot see. From the moment you first cried out as an infant, everything you have called your will, your desires, your dreams, your fears, your rage, your loves, was already being shaped, not by some sovereign mind acting freely, but by layers and layers of forces beyond your control. Genetics you did not select, parents you did not choose, cultures you were thrown into, languages you absorbed before you even understood the difference between truth and lie. You feel as though you decide, when you pick a meal, when you choose a career, when you fall in love. But beneath that feeling lies a machinery of unseen causes, chemical reactions, neural pathways, childhood wounds, ancestral traumas, evolutionary drives, all conspiring together to push you forward while your consciousness scrambles to invent reasons after the fact, decorating the inevitable as if it were voluntary. Every opinion you defend, every thought you think, every regret you nurse late into the night was set into motion long before you claimed it as your own, a domino cascade stretching back centuries, millennia, all the way to atoms colliding in the first sparks of time. And yet you still look in the mirror and speak of my choice, as though the weight of the universe were not pressing down on your every move. The very feeling of choosing is just another pre-programmed reaction, a survival illusion baked into your consciousness to keep you from drowning in the horror of your own powerlessness. Because if you ever truly understood how little control you have, how completely you are carried along by tides you cannot see and instincts you cannot edit, the fragile story of you would collapse into dust. And so you go on, running your hands along the invisible walls of your cage, believing you are steering the ship of your life, when in reality, You are simply drifting down a river whose shape was carved before you ever learned how to swim. Free will is a lie, not a philosophical puzzle, not a challenge to work harder, but the devastating realization that every decision you have ever made may have been nothing more than the only decision you could have made. Fatalism. It was always going to happen exactly this way. From the moment the first particle shivered into existence, from the first ripple of time folding over itself in the dark silence before history began, every event, every choice, every heartbeat, every tear you would ever shed was already carved into the structure of the universe, waiting for you to stumble through it as if you had any chance of changing what was never yours to change. You live your days believing in possibilities, turning left instead of right, loving one person instead of another, staying silent or speaking out as if these moments bloom freely in the soil of chance. But beneath all the noise and hope and regret, the ground is already paved, and you are only discovering what was always going to be, not deciding it. Every decision you agonized over, every fork in the road you stood before trembling with fear, was already written into the architecture of existence. And though you strain against it, though you dream of other lives, though you whisper late at night, "What if I had chosen differently?" the answer is cruelly simple. You couldn't have. You were always going to say the wrong thing. You were always going to fall for the wrong person. You were always going to fail, to succeed, to lose, to survive, to betray, to forgive, to forget, exactly when and how you did. Because no matter how much you ache for control, you are a bead of water sliding down a sheet of glass, following a path shaped by forces beyond your reach. And even knowing this, even standing awake in the terrible clarity of it, you still move, you still pretend to choose, because what else is there to do, except live the story that was already finished before you even knew you had a part in it? This is fatalism, not resignation, not defeat, but the realization that everything you are, everything you were, everything you ever will be, has already been decided in a script you are only just now reading aloud, line by inevitable line. Memento Mori. No matter how carefully you plan, how deeply you love, how fiercely you cling to every breath you take, there will come a day when your lungs will stop filling, your heart will beat its final note, and the world will carry on as if you were never here, with the same indifferent rhythm it kept long before your name ever meant anything to anyone. You can run from the thought, drown it in distraction, bury it in laughter, silence it with ambition, but it never leaves. You know it's there, curled up just beneath your joy, whispering behind your achievements, waiting behind your comfort, a shadow that grows taller the longer you pretend the light will never run out. They will forget you. All of them. Your friends, your family, even those who once said they'd never let your memory fade, until your face becomes a blur in an old photo, and your voice becomes an absence no one can quite describe. Just one more name carved into the stone silence of time. You will not matter forever, and you were never guaranteed anything. Not time, not love, not meaning, not even tomorrow. And once you truly feel the weight of that truth, once it settles deep inside your bones, it will either break you completely or set you free in a way nothing else ever could. So remember this, not to despair, not to numb yourself, not to lose hope, but to burn brighter, love harder, waste less, speak more honestly, and live as if each hour is already a memory, because it is. And one day someone will look around and realize you are no longer anywhere, except in the echo of how you lived. Speciesism. You think you're different because it's convenient to believe it. From the moment you were old enough to point at animals and name them, cat, cow, chicken, dog, you were already being taught an invisible hierarchy where some lives mattered and others didn't, not because of any real difference between their suffering and yours, but because the world you inherited needed you to believe in that difference to survive the way it does. You were trained to look into the eyes of a puppy and see a friend, to look into the eyes of a pig and see dinner, to look into the eyes of a cow and see a resource, to look into the eyes of a bird and see background noise. Even though every nervous system, every scream, every terrified heartbeat in those bodies mirrors your own in ways far deeper than your comfort wants to admit. The idea that humans are more important, more sacred, more deserving, is not a fact written into the bones of the universe, but a brutal story we tell ourselves so that we can do monstrous things without shattering under the guilt of them, so that we can cage, kill, and consume without having to look too long into the bloodshot eyes of the beings who would beg for their lives if only they could speak our language. And deep down, under the layers of culture and convenience and tradition, you know it. You know that pain is pain, no matter whose skin it lives inside. You know that terror is terror, no matter whose bones are trembling, and the knowledge gnaws quietly in the back of your mind every time you look away, every time you tell yourself that it's natural or necessary or just the way the world works. This is Speciesism, the invisible violence written into everyday life, the lie that lets you sit at the top of a pyramid built from screams you refuse to hear. The horror of infinity. There is no end, and that is the real nightmare. Infinity sounds beautiful when you whisper it in poems and dreams. Endless stars, endless love, endless possibilities. But when you truly understand it, not as an idea but as a reality, it twists into something monstrous, something so vast and cold and merciless that the human mind can only shudder against it and then retreat into smaller, safer illusions. Imagine existence stretching on forever, not 100 years, not 1,000,000, not 1,000,000,000, but forever. Every thought you could ever think eventually exhausted, every feeling dulled by repetition, every dream you could ever chase becoming meaningless in the face of a time that will never, ever run out. Imagine being trapped in a consciousness that cannot die, cannot rest, cannot escape itself, watching stars burn out one by one, galaxies collapse into black holes, even atoms disintegrate into a final dark silence. And still you remain, a flicker of awareness floating in a void that has forgotten what light and warmth and meaning even were. There is a reason death terrifies, but there is an even greater terror hiding behind it. That death is not the end, that something in you survives, and that survival itself becomes the purest, cruelest form of suffering when there is nothing left to live for, no edge to the horizon, no hope of ever reaching a final, merciful conclusion. This is the horror of infinity, not the beauty of endlessness, but the realization that endlessness means nothingness, stretched so far, it becomes indistinguishable from madness itself. Time is a loop. What if you're not moving forward at all, but trapped, spinning forever? We live believing time is a straight line, a road we walk from birth to death, a story that begins and ends. But what if that was a lie? What if every moment you've lived, every choice you've made, every breath you've taken, wasn't leading you anywhere, but looping back on itself again and again and again? You think you're making progress. You think tomorrow will be different. But what if you've lived this life before? What if you're living it right now, for the 1,000th time? Same hopes, same mistakes, same heartbreaks, same dreams you think are new, but are nothing more than echoes of a path you've already walked, a song you've already sung, a fall you've already felt, just forgotten until the loop restarts. And no matter how hard you fight, no matter how loudly you scream, no matter how desperate you are to change your fate, every step you take might just be another step deeper into a cycle you can never break. The people you love. You've loved them before. The failures that haunt you. You've failed them before. Even this exact moment, you reading these words, might be something you've already done. A ghost of an action buried under endless layers of forgotten time. This is Time is a Loop, Not a gentle cycle, not a second chance, but a trap that spins you forever in the illusion of freedom, while the walls close tighter and the future reveals itself for what it always was, the past, wearing a different mask. Eternal consciousness trap. You can escape your body, but you will never escape yourself. You spend your life fearing death, that cold unknown at the edge of everything. But what you should fear more is the possibility that death is not an end at all, but a trap, a door. You step through thinking it will lead to silence, only to find yourself still conscious, still thinking, still being, stripped of your body, stripped of time, stripped of the world, floating alone in a black eternity, with nothing left but your own decaying mind for company. At first, you might try to piece together memories, cling to scraps of your life like driftwood on a black ocean, but memory without senses becomes meaningless. Words without voices become static, and faces without touch collapse into formless, ghostly smears that swirl endlessly in the endless dark, until even the things you once loved are nothing but distortions, cruel reminders that you had a life once and lost it. There is no sleep here, no forgetting, no final breath to close the story, only an infinite falling through yourself, a loop of thought, regret, terror, and madness, where every desperate scream for release only echoes back in your own skull until language itself breaks down, and all you are left with is pure, raw, endless awareness, burning quietly in a universe that no longer even knows you exist. This is eternal consciousness trap, the nightmare you cannot wake from, the prison built from the ruins of your own mind, where death never comes, time never passes, and the only voice you will ever hear again is the voice you wish you could finally silence. Misanthropy. It's not the world you hate, it's the people who ruin it. You start off believing in the goodness of others. You tell yourself that kindness is natural, that love is inevitable, that given time and understanding, everyone could rise to something better. But the longer you live, the more you watch cruelty chosen over compassion, greed devour hope, lies eclipse truth, and you begin to understand that the problem was never a few bad people hidden in the crowd. The problem is the crowd itself. You see how easily they hurt each other for power, how eagerly they betray for comfort, how loudly they celebrate ignorance and brutality while mocking wisdom and gentleness, and slowly the illusion cracks. The stories fall apart, and you realize that beneath the smiles and small talk and laughter, there is a deep, rotting selfishness that pulses in every street, every home, every institution you once thought existed to protect something good. You look into their eyes and see the pettiness, the cruelty, the emptiness, the pathetic hunger for validation, for superiority, for control, and it leaves a taste in your mouth like ash, until the very idea of belonging among them, of being one of them, feels like an insult to your own soul, a betrayal of the better parts of yourself that the world has always taught you to hide or kill. This is misanthropy, not the hatred of individuals, not the result of a single wound or a broken heart, but the cold, slow awakening to the idea that humanity, at its root, may not be something to fix or save, but something to mourn. Appearance versus reality. What you see is not what is. You live inside a world of surfaces, faces smiling, voices speaking, objects shining under the light, and you are taught, almost without knowing, to trust these surfaces, to build your life on what you see, what you hear, what you touch, never questioning whether the truth might be hidden underneath, quietly mocking every belief you were foolish enough to build on appearances. A kind face may hide cruelty sharper than a knife. A beautiful thing may rot from within. A trusted voice may carry lies so old that even the speaker no longer knows they are lying. And while you move through your days thinking you understand what surrounds you, the real world, the cold, raw, tangled reality beneath the surface, remains forever out of reach, glimpsed only in moments of collapse, when the mask slips, when the facade shatters, when the truth howls through the cracks you tried so hard not to see. You don't perceive the world as it is. You perceive the world as you are told to perceive it, shaped by your senses, dulled by your biases, filtered by your fear of the unknown, until all that remains is a theatre of illusions played out on a stage so convincing that even the prisoners forget they are chained inside the cave. This is appearance versus reality, not a simple trick of the eye, not a mistake you can correct, but the permanent condition of your existence, a life lived behind a veil, touching shadows you mistake for solid ground, hoping against hope that the lies will be kind enough to carry you through to the end. You are a copy. The you think is original, isn't. You spend your whole life believing you're one of a kind, a unique soul, a mind unlike any other, a being with its own thoughts, its own path, its own purpose. But if you peel back the skin of your identity, if you silence the noise of your self-story long enough to really listen, what you'll start to hear is not a voice that came from nowhere, but an echo made from everything you've ever seen, heard, feared, and imitated. The way you speak, the way you move, the dreams you chase, and the things you believe are worth dying for. None of it began with you. None of it is original, because every word you say is borrowed, every gesture practiced, every belief passed down like a worn-out script that billions have recited before you. And now here you are, repeating the same lines, thinking you're improvising. Even your thoughts, the most private, intimate parts of you, aren't truly yours, because they were shaped by parents, screens, culture, trauma, voices that shaped your mind like wet clay, until what you call you was just the result of countless hands molding a mask and pressing it onto your face before you ever had a chance to ask what was underneath. You feel like a self, but you are a product. You think you chose, but you were programmed. And the worst part is this: the original you, the one that might have existed before the copying began, has been buried so deep beneath layers of repetition and conditioning that even if you dug for 1,000 lifetimes, you might never know if there was anything truly yours underneath at all. This is you are a copy, not a glitch, not a metaphor, but a quiet, existential truth. That the you walking through the world is a reflection of reflections, a ghost built from other ghosts, repeating patterns you didn't invent in a story that was never yours to begin with. You are the last human. Everyone else is gone, and you are the one who has to remember. You wake up one morning, and the streets are empty, the cities are silent. The voices you grew up with are swallowed by a wind that carries no laughter, no anger, no life at all, and you stand there blinking under a dead sky, realizing that whatever catastrophe took the rest of the world left you behind. Not as a survivor, but as a witness. At first you search, you scream, you run through abandoned houses and hollow towers hoping for signs, hoping for proof that you are not alone. But as days stretch into weeks, and weeks dissolve into months, it becomes a deeper kind of horror. Not fear of death, but fear of being the only memory left of a species that spent thousands of years clawing its way out of the mud only to vanish into dust. You wander empty highways and sit in the ruins of crowded rooms, flipping through photographs of faces no one will ever recognize again, trying to hold on to the meanings they once carried: love, friendship, ambition, rage. But the meanings rot in your hands, because meaning only exists when there are others to share it with, and without them, even your memories feel like lies whispered into an infinite void. There is no rebuilding. There is no new beginning. There is no future waiting to be born from the ashes. There is only you, a single, flickering mind, dragging the weight of all humanity's triumphs and failures behind it, carrying a torch that no one will ever see again, holding on to names and stories that will die with you in a silence too big for anyone to understand. This is you are the last human. Not a hero's journey, not a victory, but a slow, lonely fading, where the end of the world doesn't come with fire or fury, but with the soft, unbearable sound of being the last one left to remember that we were ever here at all. Thought as a virus. Your mind was never clean. It was infected from the moment you learned to think. You believe your thoughts are yours, that your dreams, your fears, your loves, your hates are born inside you, pure and original. But the truth, the sickness you never saw coming, is that thoughts are parasites, seeded into your mind by everything you touch, everything you hear, everything you love. And once they root themselves inside you, they grow and mutate and breed, until you are no longer the thinker of your thoughts, but the carrier of them. Every idea you defend with your life, every opinion you scream into the void, every belief you are willing to bleed for, they are not your creations. They are infections passed from voice to voice, generation to generation, invisible chains binding you to choices you think you made, but were made for you long before you were capable of knowing the difference. And the most terrifying part is that the virus doesn't care if it makes you happy or ruins you, doesn't care if it lifts you up or drives you insane. It only cares that you keep it alive, that you spread it, that you pour it into others like poison disguised as wisdom, building a prison of ideas around yourself and then calling that prison freedom. This is thought as a virus, not a flaw in how you think, but the foundation of thinking itself. A mind that was never truly yours, dreaming dreams it never chose, trapped inside a story it didn't write. Reality without consciousness. If no one is there to see the world, does it still matter that it exists? You grow up believing that the world is solid, forests breathing, oceans crashing, stars burning overhead. But hidden underneath that belief is a quieter, more disturbing truth, that everything you call reality is only real to you because you are here to experience it. And if you strip away consciousness, strip away the eyes that see and the minds that remember, what remains is not a beautiful living universe, but a blind, indifferent chaos, ticking forward without meaning, without witness, without anyone left to know it was ever here at all. Without a mind to hear the rain, there is no rain, only the movement of molecules. Without a mind to feel sorrow, there is no sadness, only the chemical decay of a nervous system. Without a mind to call it beautiful, a sunset is just a scattering of light across dust and air, meaningless, unmarked, a silent event in a silent cosmos, where nothing is celebrated, nothing is mourned, and nothing, absolutely nothing, is understood. You are not living inside a universe that is full of wonder. You are generating the wonder inside a universe that does not know or care what wonder even means. A universe that would go on exactly the same if every living thing fell silent tomorrow. A cold, mechanical procession of cause and effect, like a machine that never knew it was a machine. And when consciousness fades, whether in your death or in the death of everything that can ever know, feel, remember, reality will continue without a witness, without a story, without a single soul left to say it ever existed, and the truth of the universe will be the simplest, bleakest thing imaginable. It was there. It happened. And it never mattered at all. This is reality without consciousness. Not the death of life, not the death of beauty, but the death of meaning itself, leaving behind only the cold skeleton of a world that never needed you to be real in the first place. Antinatalism. To be born is not a gift. It is a burden you never asked to carry. You are taught to celebrate birth, to call it a miracle, to wrap it in bright colors and soft words. But when you strip away the stories and stare into the raw reality of it, you begin to see something darker, that to be born is to be thrown without consent into a life that will end in death, to be sentenced to suffering, to be exposed to loss, fear, failure, despair, all wrapped up in a brief flicker of consciousness that no one can escape or undo once it begins. You never asked to be here. You never had the chance. And yet you are condemned to carry the full weight of existence, to fight through hunger, loneliness, confusion, grief, aging, decay, all for a meaning you were told exists, but which slips through your fingers the harder you try to hold on to it, leaving you to wonder whether life was ever a gift at all, or simply an ancient blind impulse, a cruel continuation of suffering, generation after generation, disguising itself as hope. You are expected to endure, to find joy, to justify your existence to yourself and others. But underneath every victory, underneath every moment of happiness, the cold truth never moves, that none of this was your choice, and that every pleasure you experience is bought with inevitable pain, every laugh balanced by the certainty of loss, every beginning written by hands you never saw toward an ending you cannot escape. This is antinatalism, not a hatred of life, but the brutal recognition that existence is not a blessing granted to you, but a burden placed on you without your permission, and that sometimes the greatest mercy would have been never to awaken at all. The paradox of tragedy. Why do we find beauty in the very things that destroy us? You live your whole life trying to avoid pain, running from loss, hiding from the moments when the world tears itself apart in front of you. Yet somehow, you are drawn to tragedy like a moth to a flame, captivated by the stories of broken heroes, doomed love, irreversible failure, and suffering so pure and so massive that it almost feels holy. You weep at the fall of kings, you ache for the characters who cannot be saved. You feel your soul burn brighter when you stand in the presence of a sadness so complete that no amount of hope can undo it. And somewhere deep inside, you understand that tragedy speaks to a part of you that victory and laughter can never touch, a place so old, so raw, that it remembers that life itself is not a triumph but a slow, inevitable falling apart. You are drawn to tragedy because tragedy tells the truth, that no matter how brightly we burn, no matter how high we climb, no matter how bravely we love, everything we build will collapse, everyone we cherish will fade, and every dream we cling to will eventually dissolve into dust. And in that collapse, in that unbearable beauty of loss, there is something more honest, more human, than in all the bright, polished stories we tell ourselves to stay numb. This is the paradox of tragedy, not a flaw in your soul, not a sickness, but a deep, wordless recognition that sometimes the most beautiful thing in existence is the way even the strongest among us break. Mimetic desire. You do not want what you want what you see others wanting. You move through life believing your desires are born from inside you, that the things you chase, the things you crave, the things you would sacrifice yourself for are uniquely yours. But underneath the surface, buried in the machinery of your mind, is a much crueler truth. That your desires are reflections, copies of copies, picked up from the eyes of others, absorbed like a contagion you cannot see, until even your deepest hungers are no longer your own. You do not want the car, the lover, the life, because they would satisfy something true inside you. You want them because you have seen someone else want them, because you have seen them glow in another's hands, because desire itself spreads like a fire that does not care what it burns, only that it keeps burning, endlessly feeding itself through imitation and jealousy and the endless whisper of, "Why not me?" And no matter how high you climb, no matter how much you grasp and clutch and consume, the horizon of desire moves always just out of reach, because the thing you are chasing is not the object itself. It is the endless, hollow echo of someone else's hunger reflected in your own empty hands. This is mimetic desire, not ambition, not free will, but a slow infection of the soul, where you live not for what you truly need, but for what you have been taught to need by the aching eyes of a world that is itself lost. The statue of nature as war. What we call life is not peace. It is a battlefield carved into the bones of existence itself. You are taught to see nature as something pure, something balanced, a great harmonious system where everything fits together like a song. But the truth hiding behind the green forests and clear rivers and wide skies is that nature was never a sanctuary, never a refuge, never a mother, but a battlefield older than time, a silent war where everything that breathes is built to destroy and be destroyed in turn. Every flower blooms by killing the seeds around it. Every bird flies by stealing from the earth. Every predator survives by tearing the life out of another. And even in the smallest grains of soil, microscopic battles rage endlessly without pity, without morality, without any dream of peace. Only the endless cold drive to survive at the cost of everything else. You are not an exception. You are not above it. Your bloodline is written in conquest. Every ancestor you carry inside your body survived because they killed better, stole better, outlasted better than the ones who died. And the civilization you stand inside today, the cities, the walls, the laws, are not the triumph of human kindness, but the continuation of a deeper violence disguised in softer words. If nature could carve a statue of itself, it would not be a serene mother holding a cradle of life. It would be a broken warrior, soaked in blood, eyes hollowed by the endlessness of the fight, holding a sword rusted with the screams of a million forgotten deaths. This is the statue of nature as war. Not a tragedy, not a flaw, but the hidden truth behind every beautiful lie, that the price of life has always been paid in suffering, and always will be. The bicameral mind. You were not always the voice in your head. Once, you obeyed voices you believed were gods. Long before you thought in words, long before you could reason or argue with yourself, your mind was split. One part that spoke and one part that listened. And when commands rose up from the dark machinery inside your brain, you did not recognize them as your own thoughts. You heard them as voices outside yourself, voices of ancestors, spirits, gods, telling you what to do, guiding your hands without question, filling the silence of existence with a divine authority you dared not resist. You were not self-aware, not in the way you are now. You were a being moved by commands you did not understand, convinced by every instinct that the orders you heard were sacred, necessary, righteous. Because in a world too brutal and chaotic for fragile minds to survive alone, the illusion of hearing a God's voice was the only way to build order inside the terror of endless, meaningless life. But as the world grew louder, as the gods failed to answer the rising chaos, the voices fractured, weakened, fell silent, and what was once heard as the divine began to be recognized as a thought. And from the collapse of the bicameral mind rose something new and terrible. The isolated self, a creature now forced to command itself, to invent its own gods, to bear the crushing weight of choice without the comfort of believing the orders came from the sky. This is the bicameral mind, not a phase of growth, not a step toward freedom, but the death of a simpler way of being, leaving you alone in the cold machinery of your own head, whispering orders to yourself and pretending you are free. Absolute loneliness. There is a place where even the memory of connection dies. You spend your life surrounded by faces, voices, fleeting touches of warmth that trick you into believing you are known, that you are seen, that you are tethered to something outside yourself. But there is a deeper loneliness that waits beneath all of it. A silence not of being alone for a moment, not of missing someone across a distance, but of realizing that no matter how close you draw another person to you, no matter how much you give or beg or break yourself open, there will always be an infinite chasm between what you are and what they can ever truly touch. You are locked inside a mind they can never enter, trapped behind layers of perception, history, thought, and sensation that no one can cross, no matter how desperately they love you, no matter how deeply they swear they understand, and even in your most vulnerable moments, even when your soul feels naked in front of another, you are still an island, a lone awareness adrift in a sea of other islands, all shouting across an endless black ocean that absorbs every word before it ever reaches another shore. And when the noise falls away, when the world dims and the people leave and even the voices inside you grow quiet, what remains is not sadness, not grief, not rage, but something colder and harder. The pure, unbreakable truth that you were always alone, are alone now, and will be alone until the last flicker of thought fades from the dark theatre of your mind. This is absolute loneliness, not something that happens to you, not a punishment, but the native condition of consciousness itself, an endless private silence wrapped inside a body that never truly belonged to anyone but you. Idle talk. Most of what we say to each other is not to connect, it's to hide. You fill the silence with words about the weather, about nothing important, about distractions so small you forget you even spoke them. And you tell yourself that you are communicating, that you are touching another mind, but deep down you know the truth. You are throwing words like sand into a pit you are too afraid to look into, a pit that would show you how vast the distance between two souls really is. Idle talk masks the emptiness. It keeps you from facing the terrifying possibility that most conversations are not bridges, but walls, polite rituals performed to avoid the unbearable weight of true honesty, true vulnerability, true understanding that could tear the fragile theatre of everyday life to pieces if you dared let the words fall away. And the horror is that the more you talk, the more you polish the surface. The deeper the real silence grows underneath, untouched, unseen, waiting patiently for the day the words finally fail you and you are left standing face to face with the raw, wordless truth you spent your whole life trying not to hear. This is idle talk, not harmless chatter, but the endless weaving of a soft, fragile veil over the screaming silence that was always there. Moral desert. Being good does not mean you will be rewarded, and being evil does not mean you will be punished. You are raised to believe in a cosmic balance, in a universe where good deeds echo into blessings and cruelty circles back into suffering. But the deeper you look, the more you realize that the world does not care who deserves what. It moves by blind chance, by power, by cold mechanics that reward not the pure, but the lucky, the ruthless, the ones willing to bend and break faster than the ones who dare to believe that virtue is enough. You can live an honest life, love deeply, give selflessly, sacrifice everything for something greater, and still end up forgotten, broken, erased by a world that pays no attention to the scales you imagined were hidden behind the clouds. Because in the end, no invisible hand is watching, no great ledger is keeping track, and fairness was never stitched into the bones of existence to begin with. The cruel thrive, the selfish prosper, the liars build empires, and the gentle ones, the ones who tried to hold on to something pure, often bleed quietly into the soil, leaving behind nothing but memories that no one bothers to keep alive for long. This is moral desert, not the collapse of hope, but the brutal recognition that in this world, justice is not guaranteed, karma is not inevitable, and deserving something means nothing if the universe was never listening in the first place. The ego tunnel. You are not moving through reality. You are moving through a dream built inside your own mind. You believe you are awake, that you see the world clearly, that your mind is a window opening onto something real. But what you call reality is not the world as it is, only a tunnel carved by your brain, a narrow flickering stream of perception stitched together just wide enough, just convincing enough to keep you alive inside a universe so vast and alien that your true senses would collapse under the weight of it if they ever touched it directly. Everything you know, the colors, the smells, the pain and pleasure, even the feeling of having a body, of having a self, is a hallucination your brain weaves second by second, a virtual reality so total, so immersive, that you forget you are trapped inside it, that you are not seeing the truth, only surviving inside an illusion built for survival, not for understanding. And when you reach out to touch another, when you try to love, to hate, to connect, to destroy, you are not meeting them in the open space between souls. You are brushing tunnels against tunnels, ghosts against ghosts, each one locked in its own private dream, believing desperately that they share the same world when all they really share is the loneliness of their separate cages. This is the ego tunnel, not a prison you were thrown into, not a trick played against you, but the only reality you have ever known, a moving dream stitched into your senses, sealing you away from the infinite, while whispering the lie that you have ever truly touched anything beyond yourself. The uncanny. It looks almost right, and that's what makes it so wrong. There are moments when the world around you twists, just slightly, when something familiar, a face, a place, a memory, feels too perfect or too hollow, when the details line up too well or not well enough. And in that split second you feel a deep, primal fear, not because something monstrous has appeared, but because what should be safe, what should be real, has revealed itself as an echo, a copy, a mask stretched just a little too tight over something you were never meant to see. The uncanny is not terror born from chaos or violence. It is terror born from almost, when something beloved becomes unfamiliar, when the doll stares too long, when the empty house feels like it's still breathing, when the voice on the other end of the call sounds almost like someone you know, but moves one heartbeat out of rhythm with everything you remember. And the most disturbing part is that the uncanny doesn't invade from the outside. It rises from inside you, from the deep machinery of your own mind, the ancient systems built to recognize faces, to map spaces, to sense danger, now glitching and flashing warnings that what you are seeing should not exist, but somehow does. This is the uncanny. Not a horror you can fight, not a monster you can run from, but the slow, quiet realization that even the things you trust the most, your home, your memories, your own reflection, can betray you in the subtlest, most devastating ways, turning comfort itself into something you no longer recognize. The problem of hope. Hope doesn't free you. It chains you to a future that may never come. You are told that hope is the light you must carry, the thing that gives meaning to your struggles and your pain. But the deeper you look, the more you realize that hope is not a gift. It is a leash, a trick of the mind that ties your soul to a tomorrow that is always just out of reach, dangling promises you may die still chasing without ever holding them in your hands. Hope keeps you climbing mountains that were never meant to be climbed, keeps you loving people who were never going to stay, keeps you waking up day after day in a world that grinds your spirit down while whispering that maybe, just maybe, if you endure a little longer, something better will come. But the truth that hope hides from you is that some wounds never heal, some dreams never arrive, some broken things stay broken forever. And by the time you realize that the future you lived for was never guaranteed, you have spent the best of yourself chasing shadows, giving your time, your heart, your life to a story that was never written with you in mind. This is the problem of hope. Not that it can fail, but that it demands everything from you long before you ever find out if it was even real, leaving you clinging to the wreckage of what could have been while the world continues on without you. Death drive. You are not wired only to survive, you are also wired to self-destruct. Deep underneath your hunger to live, your instinct to grow, your desperate grasping for safety and pleasure and meaning, there coils something darker, something colder. An ancient pull, not toward life, but toward death. An invisible hand that slowly, silently urges you to sabotage yourself, to wreck what you build, to walk willingly toward your own ending, even as your conscious mind screams for survival. You are not a pure machine of self-preservation. You are a contradiction, a battlefield where the will to live and the will to vanish grind against each other without mercy. And every time you take a reckless risk, every time you ruin something precious, every time you hurt yourself for reasons you cannot explain, it is not madness or weakness. It is the death drive, whispering that peace is not found in more life, but in the final silence beyond it. And no matter how fiercely you fight, how brightly you burn, how much you swear to protect your future, the truth moves underneath it all. That part of you does not want to endure forever. Part of you hungers for the collapse, for the undoing, for the slow, beautiful quiet of no longer having to fight. This is the death drive. Not a flaw, not an accident, but the quiet truth buried in every living thing. The hunger not just for existence, but for release. Hyperbolic doubt. If you doubt deeply enough, nothing survives, not even yourself. You live your life standing on layers of assumptions you never question, that the world exists, that your senses tell you the truth, that your memories are real, that you are who you think you are. But if you push deeper, if you dare to pull on even a single loose thread with enough force, you begin to see that everything you believe rests on foundations made of mist and silence. You can doubt the ground under your feet, because your senses can lie. You can doubt the people around you, because your memories can fracture and betray you. You can even doubt the very thoughts rising inside your own mind, because they too could be planted, manipulated, dreamed inside a world that never was. And once you begin to doubt, truly doubt, the collapse does not stop until even the you doing the doubting is swallowed by it. You are left with nothing solid, no certainty to cling to, no identity to defend, no reality to confirm, only the bare, shivering fact of awareness itself, naked and alone, suspended in an endless silence, where even the existence of silence itself might be just another trick, another dream, another lie. This is hyperbolic doubt, not skepticism, not philosophy, but the abyss that opens when you realize that if anything at all can be doubted, then everything must be doubted, and when everything is doubted, nothing remains. Existential angst. You are free, and that is the root of your terror. You are not chained by fate, not imprisoned by a god's command, not dragged along a path someone else built for you. You are thrown into a world without instructions, without guarantees, without even the certainty that there is a right choice to make. And from the moment you realize this, you carry a terrible burden, the full, crushing weight of your own freedom. Every decision you make, where to go, who to become, what to believe, is carved out of nothing, without any way to know if it was right or wrong. And the deeper you understand that no one is coming to save you, no map is hidden in the sky, no final judgment waits to sort your life into meaning or mistake, the more that freedom transforms from possibility into paralysis. And even when you act, even when you love, build, dream, fight, the quiet dread never leaves you, the whisper that no matter what you choose, no matter how hard you try, you are simply moving through a chaos that doesn't care, filling empty time with actions you must invent reasons for afterward, hoping against hope that you can live without knowing if anything you did ever truly mattered. This is existential angst, not fear of death, not fear of suffering, but the silent terror of being alive without a script, holding a life you never asked for, and knowing that no one else can live it or lose it but you. Cosmic horror. The universe is not your home. It is an abyss that never even noticed you were here. You spend your life wrapped in the fragile comfort that the world was made for you, that your existence fits somewhere inside a larger story, that your thoughts and dreams matter in the structure of reality. But if you dare to look beyond the thin veil of human hope, you see a truth so vast, so cold, so merciless, that your mind can barely survive the weight of it. That the universe is not a place of purpose or kindness, not even a place of cruelty, but a blind, indifferent expanse where life itself is a statistical accident, a flicker of light already fading into the black. You are not the center of anything. You are a speck crawling on a speck, orbiting a speck, lost in a vastness so endless that the galaxies themselves are like grains of dust scattered across an ocean with no edge, no meaning, and no memory of your tiny flicker of existence. There is no salvation written in the stars, no secret plans stitched into the fabric of space and time. There is only the horror of knowing that everything you love, everything you fight for, everything you believe, will vanish without echo, without record, without even the dignity of being remembered by the cosmos that never cared you existed in the first place. This is cosmic horror. Not the fear of monsters hiding in the dark, but the realization that there are no monsters because there is no one at all, only a silence so deep and ancient that your screams dissolve before they even leave your throat. The problem of other minds. You will never truly know if anyone but you is real. You walk through a world full of faces, full of voices, full of hands that reach out to touch you, and you tell yourself that behind each pair of eyes is a soul like yours, thinking, feeling, dreaming, suffering. But the horrifying truth is that no matter how closely you love someone, no matter how deeply you study them, you can never climb into their consciousness. You can never breach the prison of your own mind. And you can never truly know if they are anything more than shadows moving through your dream. You trust their smiles. You believe their tears. You anchor your whole life to the hope that their feelings are real, that their minds are burning with a fire like yours. But deep down, the doubt never fully dies, because there is no proof that they are not empty puppets, no guarantee that they are not echoes, machines of flesh running on instinct, reflections built only to respond just enough to fool you. And once you open that door, once you allow yourself to really feel the possibility that you are the only true awareness trapped inside an endless play of lifeless actors, it doesn't matter how many hands hold yours, how many words whisper comfort into your ears. The loneliness, the crushing weight of unprovable solitude, seeps into your bones and never fully leaves again. This is the problem of other minds, not a question you can answer, not a fear you can reason away, but the silent, merciless truth that you may be, and may have always been, completely, utterly alone. Moral luck. You are judged not just by what you choose, but by the accidents you cannot control. You live believing that morality is fair, that good choices come from good character, that you are responsible for what you do and who you become. But hidden beneath every act of judgment is a brutal, silent truth. That so much of who you are and what you do is shaped by forces you did not choose, and that luck, blind, cruel, indifferent luck, plays a far larger role in your moral story than you will ever want to admit. You are born into a time you did not pick, to parents you did not choose, shaped by experiences you did not consent to, and every success you celebrate, every failure you regret, every decision you claim as yours, is tangled in a web of accidents, of genetics, of history, of chances taken and missed, so tightly that there is no clean separation between your will and the endless machinery of fate grinding quietly beneath your life. And when others look at you, when they call you good or evil, worthy or damned, they are not judging only your choices. They are judging a life whose roots are buried in luck, whose branches were bent by storms you could never see, and whose fruits were poisoned or nourished by hands you never touched. This is moral luck. Not an excuse, not a comfort, but the terrifying realization that you are praised or condemned not just for what you are, but for what you were never free not to be. Christian mortalism. What if death is not a passage, but an end so complete even your soul sleeps? You are taught to believe that the soul is immortal, that when your body crumbles to dust, your spirit will rise instantly into judgment, into reward, into punishment. But hidden within the older, quieter echoes of Christian thought is a darker, more ancient idea, that when you die, you do not ascend, you do not awaken, you do not move forward at all. You fall into silence so deep and total that it is as if you were never born. According to Christian mortalism, the soul does not survive death awake, does not drift through a higher plane conscious of its fate, but lies dormant, lost in a dreamless sleep outside the stream of time itself, untouched by memory, untouched by desire, untouched by even the faintest whisper of awareness, until, if it ever happens, the day of resurrection finally tears you from the oblivion you cannot even experience. And for all the centuries of sermons and songs promising immediate paradise or agony, the deeper fear lingers. That death is not a crossing, not a transformation, but a disappearance, a total undoing of your mind, your heart, your name, leaving behind nothing but an unknowing corpse and a soul folded so deeply into darkness that even it forgets itself. This is Christian mortalism, not the terror of eternal punishment, but the quieter, heavier horror that when your final breath leaves you, there may be no light, no flames, no sound at all, only the silent, endless forgetting of everything you ever were. The ought problem. No matter how clearly you see the facts of the world, they will never tell you what you should do. You can map every atom, explain every cause, understand every law of motion and every truth about how the universe works. But no matter how far you stretch your knowledge, you will never find, buried inside the facts, a command that tells you how to live, how to act, how to choose between good and evil, because the cold machinery of existence does not care, does not whisper, does not even recognize the language of ought at all. You see suffering and say we ought to stop it. You see injustice and say we ought to resist it. But the universe sees only motion and reaction, cause and effect, and no scientific law, no historical event, no biological process will ever generate a single reason why you should or should not act. Because ought does not exist in the structure of reality, only in the desperate cries of human beings trying to paint meaning onto a world that remains silent. You can understand everything about life, how it grows, how it withers, how it survives. But none of that knowledge will ever contain the command that life should be protected, that love should be cherished, that cruelty should be condemned, and so you are left standing naked at the crossroads of existence, holding nothing but your own invented values against a void that refuses to bless or curse anything you do. This is the ought problem, not a flaw in morality, but the unbearable truth that every rule you live by is something you have had to forge yourself in a world that does not care if you follow it or abandon it. Incompatibilism. Freedom and determinism cannot exist together, and if one is true, the other is a lie. You live your life believing you are free, that you choose your actions, that your will is something pure and untouchable, standing apart from the cold machinery of the universe. But if determinism is true, if every thought, every twitch of desire, every heartbeat is the inevitable consequence of the atoms and laws set in motion long before you ever opened your eyes, then your freedom is nothing more than a comforting illusion stitched into the system to keep you from realizing that you are a machine built of cause and effect, moving toward an end you never chose. You can try to redefine freedom. Try to say that even if your choices are determined by causes outside your control, you are still free because you are doing what you want. But if what you want was determined for you, built into you by forces you did not invent and cannot undo, then even your wants are not yours, and the very core of your so-called freedom collapses into dust. And if determinism is false, if the universe is not chained by cause and effect, then your actions are not free either, because without causality, your choices are no longer reasoned or controlled, but random, chaotic, meaningless flashes, without cause or purpose. And true freedom, the freedom you dream of, becomes impossible in either case, slipping through your fingers no matter how tightly you try to hold it. This is incompatibilism, not just a debate about philosophy, but the unbearable realization that you are either a puppet dancing on invisible strings, or a spark flaring blindly in the dark, never knowing why. Dark matter. Most of the universe is made of something you cannot see, cannot touch, cannot even truly imagine, and it will never reveal itself to you. You look up at the stars, and you tell yourself you are seeing the universe. You stare into the bright scatter of light, and you believe you are touching the infinite. But the brutal truth is that everything you can see, everything you can touch, everything you have ever known or will ever know, is less than a tiny fraction of what exists. Because the universe is not made of stars, or planets, or light, but of something hidden, something massive and silent and cold, something that bends galaxies into shapes they do not choose, something that moves through you right now without leaving a trace you will ever feel. Dark matter is not just invisible, it is untouchable by every sense you were born with, ungraspable by every dream you have ever woven about your place in the cosmos, and it outnumbers the world you think you live in by orders of magnitude so large that even your imagination begins to fracture trying to picture it. You are a ghost floating inside a ghost universe, clinging to the tiny islands of ordinary matter, while the true mass, the true structure, the true skeleton of reality moves unseen all around you. And the terrifying truth is that you will live your entire life and die under a sky full of stars without ever truly seeing the thing that holds all of it, and you, in place. This is dark matter, not the mystery of what is missing, but the realization that everything you call real is already swimming inside an invisible ocean so vast, so indifferent, and so unreachable that even knowing it exists changes nothing. Abjection. It is not fear that makes you recoil. It is recognizing something that should not exist inside you. You spend your life building walls, crafting careful boundaries between what is pure and what is foul, what is self and what is other, what is sacred and what is forbidden. But sometimes, in a flash too fast to control, something crosses the line. Something that should have stayed buried rises up into your sight, into your touch, into your body itself, and in that moment, you feel not simple disgust, not simple terror, but a deeper horror, the collapse of the very categories that keep you sane, the rotting corpse, the bleeding wound, the broken rules of form. They are not horrifying because they are strange, but because they remind you, against your will, that your body, your identity, your very self is stitched together with the same fragile, decaying matter as the thing you cannot bear to look at. And as you recoil, as you gag, as you turn away, some part of you knows that you are not rejecting something foreign, but recognizing something hidden. a truth you spend your whole life running from. That you are not separate from death, from decay, from the monstrous, but built out of it, stitched together by forces you do not understand, and that will one day undo you. This is abjection, not a feeling, not a mistake, but the raw tearing of the thin veil that separates you from everything you cannot survive, knowing you are. Panopticism. You are not just watched, you are shaped by the idea that you could be watched at any moment. You live thinking you are free, thinking you make choices from inside yourself, but once you know you can be seen, once you feel the invisible eyes that might be watching, judging, recording, you begin to reshape yourself from the inside out, moving, speaking, even thinking, according to rules you cannot see, until you are no longer acting for yourself at all, but for the silent, constant gaze you can never fully escape. You do not need bars to be imprisoned. You do not need walls to be cornered, because Panopticism builds the prison inside your own mind, making you the guard who watches himself, the prisoner who disciplines himself, the soul who breaks itself down piece by piece to fit the expectation of watchers who may not even be there. And over time, without even noticing, you begin to dream differently, move differently, love differently, erasing parts of yourself before anyone else can, polishing yourself into something acceptable, not because someone commanded it, but because the idea of being seen has hollowed out your freedom and left you performing a life for eyes you cannot see and voices you will never hear. This is Panopticism, not fear of punishment, not paranoia, but the slow transformation of human life into a theatre of obedience, where you become the architect of your own invisible cage. Zeno's paradox. The closer you get to your destination, the more infinite the journey becomes. You believe that movement is simple, that you can cross a room, reach a goal, close the distance between yourself and the thing you want. But hidden underneath every step you take is a quiet, impossible logic, that to reach any point, you must first reach halfway, and before you reach halfway, you must reach halfway to halfway, and before even that, halfway to halfway to halfway, splitting reality into smaller and smaller demands until the act of moving from one point to another becomes an infinite series of tasks you can never fully complete. Every journey you ever take, every plan, every dream, every desperate lunge toward the future is haunted by this fracture, because no matter how small the distance grows, there is always another gap, another fraction to cross, another invisible failure between you and the end. And though your senses tell you that you move, that you progress, that you arrive, the logic beneath it whispers that motion itself should be impossible, that every step you take is a paradox performed blindly against the true nature of space and time. And if motion is an illusion, if progress is an illusion, if reaching is a lie you tell yourself so you can bear the weight of your own existence, then you are not racing toward anything at all. You are caught in an endless collapse toward a goal that you can never truly touch. This is Zeno's paradox, not just a trick of philosophy, but the deep, hidden terror that even the act of moving forward might be nothing more than a beautiful, endless mistake. Inverted spectrum. You think you see the same world as everyone else, but you can never truly know. You look at the sky and call it blue. You look at the grass and call it green. You point to colors and build your life around them, as if they are stable, shared, universal. But hidden underneath that easy certainty is a terrifying possibility. That what you see as blue, someone else might see as red, or yellow, or a color you have never even imagined. And yet because you were both taught the same names, because you both learned to call different sensations by the same word, you will never know that your worlds are not the same. You live trapped inside your own private theater of perception, a sealed world of colors, sounds, textures stitched together by your mind alone. And you trust that others see what you see, feel what you feel, dream what you dream. but no amount of language, no amount of love, no amount of shared experience will ever let you climb into their senses, into their consciousness, and verify that the worlds you both live in are anything more than carefully synchronized hallucinations. And if the inverted spectrum is real, if every mind is surrounded by its own invisible, impenetrable atmosphere of private sensations, then the very idea of common experience, of true empathy, of shared reality itself, begins to fracture into dust, leaving behind only islands of consciousness shouting names into the dark and mistaking the echoes for understanding. This is inverted spectrum, not a simple thought experiment, but the crushing realization that you may be forever locked inside a world that only looks like it matches anyone else's. Negative panpsychism. Not only are you alone, everything else is truly, completely dead. You sometimes comfort yourself with the thought that the universe is alive, that maybe every stone, every tree, every river hums with some secret, sleeping awareness, that consciousness might be woven into the very fabric of reality. But negative panpsychism tears even that fragile hope away, whispering that you are not surrounded by hidden minds, not embraced by a living cosmos, but utterly entombed inside a mechanical corpse so vast and empty that even the stars themselves are nothing more than cold engines grinding blindly toward decay. You are not speaking to the world when you cry out in grief or wonder. You are shouting into a void that does not know you are there, a place where the rivers do not dream, the forests do not feel, the mountains do not remember, and every beautiful thing you have ever seen is nothing but dust and gravity, light and force, stitched together by accident and moving without purpose, without mind, without even the ghost of a soul. And if you vanish, if your consciousness blinks out tomorrow and your voice is swallowed into silence, the universe will not mourn you, will not notice you, will not even mark that you were ever here at all, because everything you loved, everything you touched, everything you believed might have a soul, was dead all along. This is negative panpsychism, not just loneliness, but the absolute certainty that you are a tiny, flickering mind trapped inside a universe that was never alive and never will be. The unreality of time. You are not moving through time. You are trapped inside an illusion you cannot escape. You believe that the past has slipped away, that the future is still waiting to be born, that you are riding a river of moments flowing from what was toward what will be. But beneath the illusion of movement is the silent, staggering possibility that all moments exist at once, unchanging, unmoving, layered like pages in a book you are too small to read all at once. And what you call passing time is nothing more than your mind flipping through the pages one by one, mistaking the turning for a journey. You think yesterday is gone, but it still exists. You think tomorrow is not yet real, but it already is. You think now is a fleeting spark, but it too is frozen, locked forever in a timeless tapestry where nothing is truly created, nothing is truly destroyed, and every moment that will ever happen, every breath you will ever take, is already stitched into the endless stillness of being. And if time is not real, if past, present, and future are all illusions sewn into your perception, then the life you think you are building, the changes you think you are making, the future you are racing toward are already written, already sealed, already forgotten by a universe that does not move, does not change, does not even recognize that you are here. This is the unreality of time, not the fear of death, not the fear of aging, but the deeper horror that you are not living at all. You are simply trapped in a single eternal scream across a canvas that will never change. Sentatorialism. It is not hatred, not cruelty, not injustice that defines the world, but pure, empty indifference. You want to believe that when you suffer, when you fail, when you fall to your knees begging for something to answer back, there is at least some force that notices. A god, a fate, an enemy, even a cruelty that would at least acknowledge your existence. But the deeper truth is colder, sharper, more unbearable, that the universe is not against you, and it is not for you. It simply does not care. No matter how much you build, no matter how much you love, no matter how many dreams you tear from the burning wreckage of your days, everything you are and everything you do drifts across a backdrop of silence so vast and empty that your screams do not even echo. They are swallowed whole, unnoticed, as if they were never made. You are not struggling against some malicious fate. You are struggling against nothing, against the pure, unblinking absence of concern that surrounds you from the first breath you take to the last breath you lose. A silence so complete that it does not even recognize it has consumed you. This is Sentatorialism, not the tragedy of being defeated, but the horror of realizing that even your defeat does not matter. The Myth of Sisyphus. You are condemned not by punishment, but by the endless need to keep going. You push the stone up the mountain, day after day, year after year, lifetime after lifetime, and you tell yourself there is a meaning in it, a reward waiting at the top, a redemption for all your effort and your pain. But when you reach the summit, the stone slips, falls, and you are forced to walk back down into the dust and the silence and begin again. Not because you failed, but because the structure of existence itself demands it. You are not punished by agony, not tortured by violence. You are crushed by repetition, by the endless unfolding of effort without finality, by the knowledge that no matter how hard you strive, no matter how fiercely you believe, no ending will come to bless your struggle with meaning. Only another day, another climb, another moment when you must shoulder the burden again without a reason you can cling to. And somewhere deep inside, beneath your dreams, beneath your willpower, beneath even your memories of why you started, you realize the most terrible truth, that the struggle is all there is, that there is no finish line, no reward, no applause, only the hollow, sacred terror of continuing simply because you exist and you must. This is the myth of Sisyphus, not a story about defeat, not a story about triumph, but the endless, quiet horror of finding yourself alive, with no purpose but to go on,